Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me as we take a look at your Sunday snowstorm. Finally, just a snowstorm. We're going to publish this on Saturday. That's today, obviously, this afternoon. So we are looking at a storm coming through. All snow, not huge, but decent by this winter standards. Still haven't had a blockbuster winter storm yet. But it might come. You never know. For all things considered, for an El Nino winter, it hasn't been terrible. I know it hasn't been amazing, but the stretch we've had in January has been okay-ish. We still have snow on the ground. Skiers are doing okay. We haven't had a lot of powder. We'll have to see if that happens. But, at least the trail counts have come up and things have gotten better than they were certainly in late December, early January. Here's our storm. Let's get to the crux of what's going on here. Big piece of energy here. This looks like the kind of storm you're like, ooh, this could be a doozy, all right? It's got all the ingredients for it, except for a couple, really one, which is that we don't have Arctic air in place to our north that's kind of able to create this huge temperature contrast to really develop the storm. This has a lot of southern jet stream energy. We've talked about that all winter, how the active southern jet, which is often the case for El Nino. But to the north, we do not have significant northern stream energy. There is some energy that sort of dove down in it, but the cold air, and there is some very cold air, but it is locked way up in northern Canada and Alaska right now, poised to at some point maybe make a run at us, but not at the moment. And so the lack of that is keeping this storm from really exploding, even though it looks pretty impressive. Let's take a look at it on radar, and you can see, ooh, here we go. Here's our system basically right here over western Tennessee. And northern Mississippi. Wrapped up pretty good here. Lots of thunderstorms, plenty of moisture. We do have kind of high pressure in place. It's kind of setting the stage to keep us just cool enough. We have cooled aloft a little bit today, even as temperatures actually this afternoon were pretty warm, especially when we had the brief sun, some this afternoon. But we have cooled, and we will cool. We will be cold enough for snow here. It will be somewhat marginal. This is going to take a track that would normally be fluffy snow for us. It's not going to be overly fluffy snow because just the temperatures are marginal. We don't have our kind of normal mid-January, late January kind of temperatures to our north and our west to tap into, but it will be cold enough that we will be all snow, and it won't be like a super pasty snow, but it'll definitely be a more dense snow than you might get out of this typical of a storm track. We're going to take a look at that track as we go forward a little bit further. But I want to talk a little bit about, here we go, surface. Here's your low pressure on the surface. You can see we kind of have a little bit of, even beginning with this stalled out front, connection to some Atlantic moisture. The Atlantic moisture is going to wrap in kind of late, as it takes a long time for this storm to kind of redevelop off the coast. But when it does so, we might still get a little bit of that enhancement. That's what's going to enhance our snowfall rates tomorrow evening. So we're going to start off 8 to 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. You're going to see some light snow start to break out. It kind of is going to look like not much is happening, I think, for a lot of the afternoon. Light snow, maybe enough to make it a little bit slippery, but not more than an inch or maybe two by the time we get to evening. But then for a few hours in the evening, it could snow pretty good, half inch an hour. I don't think we're going to see explosive like 1 to 2 inch an hour snowfall rates. That seems unlikely, but half inch an hour for a few hours before midnight. That'll make it real kind of nasty to travel, and then some lighter snow to kind of end things off, when it will get a little more fluffy as we head towards tomorrow morning. You can see there is a front way up to your north across Hudson Bay. This is kind of the boundary for where that Arctic air is, and that's a little too far away for us to really tap on this storm. Temperatures here are just marginally cool enough for snow. Let's take a look at the overall upper level map, and you can see this is a good dip in the jet stream. We got lots of the shade here as vorticity. That's basically vertical motion in the atmosphere, and upward vertical motion, and you can see that we've got plenty of that happening in around our storm. But you can also see where we've got these tight lines packed together. These are ice heights at 500 millibars, and you can see that there's a jet stream way to our north. And if we were going to kind of point out a southern, we kind of have a split flow here with a dip in the southern part of the jet stream. It's not really a southern jet. Usually you'd look for a subtropical jet stream, would be way further south, but this is kind of a southern piece of the jet stream has split off, that's creating our storm. But we still kind of have northern jet stream energy to our north, and you need a full latitude system that includes both the northern and southern jet stream. When they all come together, that's when you can get explosive storm growth. That's not happening with this system. Also, this is really the difference between where we are locked in some very cold air, which I'm going to show you in a little bit, and just kind of actually relatively seasonable air, and then kind of a little bit above average air really in Canada and a lot of eastern Canada, where it's just not nearly as cold as it can be. this time of year, but way up to the north, we are locked in some very cold air. So let's take a look at those temperatures, because there are some real cold temperatures. Here you can see eastern Quebec, Ontario, in a lot of 20s, even a few 30s, quite a ways north of us. No real cold to tap. But if you go further north, particularly Alaska, we have some very cold temperatures. It's not really afternoon in Alaska because those portions of interior Alaska essentially get no daylight this time of year, maybe a couple of hours of essentially twilight. But yeah, extreme cold, 50 to 60 below zero. I mean, it is Alaska. That does happen. But even for Alaska, that's 50 below zero is 50 below zero. And lots of 20 and 30 below zero temperatures here, so you can kind of see that dividing line. That's the Arctic air that we're not going to quite be able to tap, and it doesn't. I don't see this making a run at us in the short term after the storm either. But just the fact that it's building up there always means that, hey, a piece of it can break off and head towards the northeastern United States, and you can see those Arctic temperatures. Again, don't see that happening anytime in the near future, but in the next like to say in the normal forecast range, like 5 to 7 days. But the fact that it's there means that over the next couple of weeks, we're going to have to just wait and see. And it's not unusual when Alaska gets real cold for a couple, 2-3 weeks later for us to get that kind of cold in the way that the pattern tends to sometimes set up. So that would not be unusual. So I don't think we're going to be 50 below zero. As a matter of fact, I can guarantee you no 50 below zero temperatures in Vermont, but we could be cold. So we'll have to wait and see if that actually materializes. That's way far out. We're not really paying attention to that because before we get to that, so let's still look at how the storm is going to kind of wrap up. Here is the HRRR model, which is sort of it does a pretty good job of kind of showing you the evolution of the storm. So my first few frames on this are basically tomorrow at noon-ish. Or sorry, not noon, tomorrow at about 7 a.m. By about noon, you can see here's about noon or so. You're getting a few of the flakes to kind of start to head in. And you can watch, this is your evening time frame where some of those, you get the darker blues there. And then we kind of linger with some backside snow. And you could get an inch or two on this backside here. Sometimes that lingering snow piles up pretty well. Even though it's not actually precipitating that hard, it gets to kind of be real fluffy. And we could get a little bit of fluff then. Although we're not going to tap any real cold temperatures, even at the back end. So it's not going to be, we're not going to be looking at like 3 or like 30 to 1 ratios of snow to 1 inch of liquid rain to snow, which you sometimes get on those backsides. That's a kind of out west snow where they get that powder that just weighs nothing. Okay, let's take a look at, if you haven't subscribed, I'm going to show you a snowfall map right after this, but I want to just remind you, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, which we just went over 1,000, but we'd like to keep moving, see how many people we can get to subscribe. This shows you how to do it. You click on that subscribe button, just like you see the mouse doing right there. And then if you want to make sure you don't miss any of my alerts, you hit on the little thing that says all. That'll alert you, send alerts to your phone. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we're looking at for actual snowfall totals. Not a huge dumping, but definitely decent for this winter. And again, all snow is always good. 3 to 6 generally in southern Vermont, with some jackpot areas. Southern greens, the closer, basically this will probably be kind of your jackpot area, and elevations above 1,500 feet, roughly 5 to 8 inches of snow. And it wouldn't be shocking to see even an inch or two more than this in a few favored spots. 2 to 5, a little bit less the further away from the system you get. So northern Windsor County, northwestern Rutland County, I would think Rutland's 3 or 4 inches of snow. Manchester's probably 3-4 inches of snow. Even Bennington, kind of 3 or 4 inches of snow. It's a little pasty down that way. Connecticut River Valley, a little bit more, a little bit less of a shadow on the west side of the greens here. A lot of us, though, in that 3 to 6 inch range. The Monadnocks in New Hampshire also looking at 5 to 8 inches of snow. 3 to 6 otherwise in general across southern New Hampshire. And most of Massachusetts, where we start to hit some mixing issues the further south and the further east you go, but 3 to 6 inches for the portions that are shown. In this map, at least, if you're down near the coast, you might get mostly a washout out of this system. There's just not going to be quite enough cold air. So let's take a look at those highlights. Snow begins between about 10 a.m. and noon tomorrow. It's light for the first part, but there could be enough of it that you're going to have to just be careful to travel anytime after noon tomorrow. Shouldn't be terrible, but it's going to be, just keep an eye out. Snowfall's heaviest between about 5 p.m. and midnight on Sunday evening. So that's when the travel could get pretty tricky for a while. And definitely if you don't have to travel after 5 p.m. tomorrow, it's probably a good idea to try to avoid that. Light snow could linger through daybreak Monday morning. Roads will be slick, particularly Sunday late afternoon or mid-afternoon through Monday morning. morning. They'll be cleaning up on Monday morning. I think lots of school delays are the likeliest thing on Monday, as the snow will be pretty much wrapping up by the time the kiddos will be off to school. But a few cancellations are possible on Monday morning, but I think it's more delays. As like I said, the heaviest of the snow will be over for a few hours before that, so have a chance to crews will have a chance to get out there and really kind of push back snow in the early morning and give a chance for it to get those roads in good shape. So that's kind of what we're looking at. If you have, I will have a video on Monday to talk about next week's work week forecast. And if you have any questions, you can always ask them on social media or reach out to me via email, and I really appreciate that. I want to give you just a quick shout out to my patrons who help support what I do here at the West River Weather Guy, especially some of the new patrons who've jumped on board recently. Really appreciate them. If you're interested in what you get for being a patron, you can take a look in the description on the YouTube video. There is a link to my Patreon page, which has some information about what it means to become a patron. There is an opportunity to get all my patrons get an extra forecast on Wednesday, which is a weekend forecast. And then the patrons, some of the patrons get their my forecast emailed to them. Some of them get an extra 10-day forecast, which I do on Wednesdays as well. And and I really appreciate them supporting the channel. They help make this thing happen. We will be back, like I said, or I will be back, I should say, on Monday morning with your work week forecast.